Welcome to Authorlink, Miss Marr, or can we call you Elle?
Of course, yes. Elle, please. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, Publishers Weekly called you the writer to watch, which, must be a wonderful feeling. Um, you strive to tell powerful stories and compelling stories of women who demonstrated resilience in the face of rather great obstacles. I can relate to this a little bit because I've had a bit of family history that has had women in great obstacles, and I understand that you have too. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think that's definitely something that motivates me in writing stories. I think the most interesting stories are ones that we can find reflections of ourselves in. And
Mm,
so I definitely had my personal experience, my family's history, uh, motivating me and kind of inspiring me along the way with this story.
beautiful. Um, so you're the author of thrillers The Missing Sister, I understand, named number one Amazon bestseller, number one in the Kindle store, an Amazon charts bestseller, featured in Women's World, and named one of Pop Sugar's 31 thrillers of 2020. So that's pretty amazing accolades there. The Lies We Bury 2021, it was released, which earned a Kirkus starred review. Was named one of the Nerdy Daily's eagerly anticipated thrillers. It's a bit of a
Mouthful there.
and reached number one in serial killer fiction for 4 straight weeks. And now you have Strangers We Know, which I love the title, by the way. And
Thank you.
it's been amazing. It's been like like fire in a dry wild rush. So that's one book a year. How are you managing to produce, before we get on to Strangers We Know, how are you managing to produce such excellent work like within a year? What's your writing schedule, for instance?
Well, thank you for the kind words and for reading off those accolades. I truly, they continue to surprise and please me deeply. So thank you for sharing those. Uh, my writing schedule is a bit harried, to your point. It's a very busy schedule, and I'm very privileged and lucky in that I have a great support system around me. My family is very supportive, and my two small kids are very
You've got
amenable
two
to,
kids.
you know, seeing me wake up earlier than them, really, and then going to bed later than them, and then being a little tired throughout the day. They're a very understanding bunch. So it's a combination of, I'll flatter myself by saying, excellent work ethic and good time management skills
Hmm.
that are then forced to become even better time management skills to accommodate my kids and my family.
Yeah. How old are your children, if we might ask?
No, I have a 2-year old, and then I just actually gave birth about a month ago to my second.
Oh my God. That's
So I'm,
amazing.
I'm a bit of a workaholic, if you can't tell.
No, that's wonderful. Well, congratulations. How wonderful. I
Thanks
mean,
very
I
much.
remember when my daughter was that young and it was just an absolute joy. It's exhausting, of course, but an
That's
absolute
the right way
joy.
to describe it, a joy, an exhausting joy.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so going to Strangers We Know, it was inspired by your mum's adoption story, is that right? And the eventual capture of the Golden State Killer with the DNA sampling and the. Can you tell us a little bit how you connected the dots there with that particular story?
Yes, and thank you for this prompt. I have always known that my mother was adopted, and at the age of 9, I finally understood what that meant, and I asked her, I know we have excellent family members. My grandparents, her adoptive parents, are amazing. We love them deeply. But what about our medical history? What do we know about that? What can we expect in 50 years? And as a 9-year old, a precocious 9-year old, that really was top of mind for me.
Yeah.
And my mother, you know, she said, I don't need to know that. And I don't know the answers. My family is enough for me. And while I agreed, my grandparents are wonderful, I was also intensely curious, and that curiosity never left me. So, with that personal experience and burning desire for answers, I then came across the story of the Golden State Killer, um, the Golden State Killer was a serial rapist and murderer that started in Sacramento, California, where I actually grew up. And so I knew him as a different moniker when I was a child. And eventually he was on the run from police for about 30 years or closer to 40 years. And then through revelations fueled by DNA testing, the authorities were finally able to identify him and then arrest him and imprison him. And it was coupled with my original curiosity around biological answers from an adoptee perspective, with the revelation of this criminal predator, their identification being facilitated by DNA testing, that I really got the idea to combine those. And I thought that it might be compelling for people who are taking DNA testing, who are curious about how that affects legal statutes or how that's being legislated on currently, and what that might mean for our personal rights, as well as our facilitation of cold cases and finding answers for families that have long been searching for them. So I personally was very intrigued by that combination, and I hope that readers are as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a page turner for sure. I mean, yeah, I would totally understand why you connected those two parallels, I suppose. How did your mum feel about your book when she read it, knowing that she was part and parcel the inspiration for it?
She's definitely flattered. She's a big supporter of my writing career, and she loved being a part of the original premise and inspiration for it. We've since this is another aspect of it. I did do DNA testing, and I did connect with our biological family. And so I did end up receiving a lot of those answers I originally have been wanting for decades.
Yeah.
So it was a real gift to then fuse that experience of going to meet my biological family members with my mom and learn a little bit more.
Wow.
And I tried to imbue that sense of anxiety and also excitement and optimism that I felt in my main character's journey, as she likewise does the same. She goes to meet biological family.
Yeah. How wonderful for you. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I don't want to pry too much, but I mean, it must have been very nerve-wracking for you and your mother when you first met your biological family.
Yes, nerve-wracking is the right word. But it was a lot of excitement. And, it's been a long time since those events that led to my mother's adoption. And, we all had different lives. I was able to travel to Texas, which I'd never done before. So it was a lot of fun to go and see that other side of the United States.
Texas.
And it was really, truly, it was such a great experience. And I find that the stories that I like the most, that I write, that I'm the most excited by, and that I return to the page each day, excited to continue, are ones that stem from personal experiences. So I felt like it was a gift all the way around, and I'm so pleased to know my biological family as a result of that trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so do you, when you're writing in general, do you plot out the story, or do you just sort of write by the seat of your pants, basically, like, to use a better term?
Yes, I know that term well. I wish I was that efficient to where I could just write the best story that came out of my fingertips. But alas, I must outline. I must at least get a structural idea of where I'm going. Otherwise, I will just waste months and months. I do think there's an element of surprise for me still, in that I plot out the basic points, but then I never really know where the story is going. I have a general map, but sometimes I take a few U-turns. I take a few off the beaten path areas, subplots, and I often discover new characters along the way. So I do a combination of both, I like to think.
Yeah, that sounds good. What were you doing before you were an author? I mean, what were you involved in, or what sort of made you happy? And
yeah, that's a great question. I actually had moved to France to teach English for sociology and psychology students at the university in Normandy. And it was there that I first began writing. It was during a snowstorm, and I really just wanted to entertain myself with the story. And I truly never thought that writing a novel was possible. I thought you required an MFA or some kind of higher level education in creative writing, which I do not have. But as it happens, it just requires perseverance and endless patience for rewriting the same story over and over.
Right, for sure. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, that sounds good. And was that your first book that you published, or was it, yeah, The Missing Sister, or was it something that you had written beforehand that you just put in the drawer again and forgot about it until you thought it was good enough to show somebody?
My first book that I wrote has never, it's probably been read by 10 people total, but it has not been published.
Oh,
My second book that I wrote was The Missing Sister. That was my debut
oh,
thriller.
oh, lovely.
And so I worked on that for a good 3 years before I signed with my literary agent. And then we sold that book 2 months later to my publisher.
Wow, how exciting that must have been for you. And that was only recently, that was only a few years ago. This was like in the middle of COVID, right?
Yes, The Missing
Right.
Sister published in April 1st, 2020. So it really was right when the pandemic was declared and everyone was, uh, of course, duly terrified and homebound. And
Right.
so there was a lot of reading going on, which I was grateful for, but then I had all of my in-person events canceled, and the rest is history, of course.
Yeah, that that would have been a bit of a bummer, to be honest, knowing that you could have
For,
had
of course, many reasons.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so another thing I wanted to ask you is, have you ever received any constructive criticism about your writing or about your books? And have you decided to take it on the chin, or have you just ignored it, or have you taken it on, or how do you deal with it? Pardon me.
I receive constructive criticism from my husband,
Oh, well.
who reads my work before I send it to my agent. And so I sometimes will take it on the chin and will incorporate it. Other times I will vehemently reject it until probably 3 weeks later when I admit that he was right and I was wrong.
That's cool. So he's obviously a big book reader as well, for him to be able to. Does he like thrillers at least? To be able to be, qualified to comment on what you've put forward.
I love how you phrased that, to be
I'm trying to
qualified to
be
comment.
diplomatic. Yeah.
I've suspected in the past that he's not qualified to comment as he does, but he surprises me every time he proves me wrong. He's very astute at edits and the editorial review. Yeah, and he's not actually a big reader, but he reads my work and he really loves my work. So I'm
Oh,
very grateful for that.
yeah. Clearly, he's doing something right with his opinion and with his constructive feedback, because that they've done so well already, and the fact that you're churning them out every year just seems like you've just got this trajectory that's just gonna keep on going up and up and up, which is wonderful for you and your beautiful little family. I mean, but mostly for you because you're doing something that you love. So, um, as well as
Exactly.
raising your children and okay, so next
Exactly.
question.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah, yeah, good, good. And enjoy it. I mean, it's not often that people can say that they're living the dream and they're writing and they're raising and so I mean, life's
Yeah.
full of ups and downs, but it's wonderful that you're enjoying this part of your life at the moment. Um, so what's the hardest thing anyone's ever said to you about your writing?
Oh, I think just off the top of mind that uh, it's not for me. That's what I think is the hardest thing to come to terms with as a writer, to believe that your work is worthy or is compelling or is um, well written, and then to have someone tell you it's just not for me. I didn't enjoy it. It was that, because that's something that you can't control. It's entirely subjective, and that's the nature of art in general. So everyone's entitled to their opinion, but it's very hard to accept sometimes that there's nothing you could do. It just isn't that person's genre, or that person just didn't like the character that I wrote, or wholeheartedly disagreed with me based on their personal experience. And so that is something that, you know, it never gets easier, but it's something that I also believe is the reader's right. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and certainly to consume my work once it's published. That's their experience.
Yeah, yeah. So how was it when you tried to first find an agent, when you first, you had The Missing Sister already and completed, and you started sending out your manuscript to different agents, and how long did that take? Did you have many rejections? Did you get a straightaway answer like, yes, we're on? Are you still with the agent? These kinds of questions is something that our readers quite often ask us. So,
They're great questions. And I am still with my agent that I signed with in 2018.
nice.
She is Elle Marr of the Sandra Dixter Literary Agency, and she's incredible. I feel very lucky that we found each other. I actually submitted to her, I queried her via after concluding the Twitter pitch party. I don't know if you're familiar with the Twitter writing community, but it was a big source of support and inspiration for me as I was querying and as I was writing and refining my manuscript, which became The Missing Sister. I did a Twitter pitch party. I submitted my, at the time, I think it was 130 words to pitch my premise, and then agents and editors would then like that premise or that tweet and then invite you to query them formally.
Wow.
And so my agent did like that tweet, and a number of other agents did. And Jill and I ended up just connecting, and she got my book, and she was very confident that she could sell my book. And she's since sold 3 others. So she's doing a great job.
Yeah. Yay, Jill. Well done.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Good for you both.
We're a good team.
You found each other, yeah. So we understand that you realized you wanted to be an author from a very young age when you were jumping on like writing websites, adult writing websites, and putting in your own 5 cents worth. So tell us a little bit about that. That's really cute.
Yes, that's great. You've done your research. I haven't spoken about that in a little while. That's a very fond memory for me. Again, as a precocious 9-year-old, I found an online writing community back when the internet was really just starting. I'm aging myself. It was on Prodigy, if anyone recalls that original platform. Prodigy was pre-AOL, America Online. So it was, gosh, wow. I mean, definitely mid 90s, maybe early 90s. And I found a writing community where everyone would write their own chapters, their own characters, and then submit them. And then other writers would interact with those characters with their own characters.
Oh, yes,
and
that's
so,
right. Yes, I remember this.
Yes. Yeah, and it was lots of fun, loads of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't tell anyone that I was a child. I masqueraded as an adult, which
so
is
cute.
very strange to think about now.
Well, people were interacting with you, and you were like 9 years old, and they were interacting with your characters.
Yeah, I really think I was 8 or 9 years old. I wish I had a record of it, but Prodigy has since been wiped from the internet consciousness. So, but I had a character, and she was in high school, which of course I knew nothing about as a child in elementary school, except for what I saw on TV. And that really was the first time I thought I could do this. Again, very confident, overly confident, perhaps. I was taken by the idea of writing my own characters and then creating worlds with them. So it was a good introduction for me.
Right. So why didn't you get into writing? Like, why didn't you do a Masters of Fine Arts or an English literature or a writing or creative writing course? Why did you go to the Sorbonne and do French and languages?
Well, immersing myself in the French language and in learning more about French in general, and then at the Sorbonne and studying other cultures, I really was towing the line of what I thought was an acceptable career, while still feeding that part of me that needed that creativity. It took me a long time to understand that if I'm not doing something creative, I'm really not happy and I'm not my best self. And at the same time, I thought the barriers to a writing career were so great, i.e., it would require a master's, an MFA, to your point, or some kind of formal training that I didn't have and wasn't willing to pay for or seek out. And so these little baby steps that I took throughout my life to get to where I am were me kind of gradually letting go of the idea that I needed to do something more stable, that I could just live a life writing books and that hopefully readers would follow and I'd be able to do this for many, many years. And so it just never seemed like an option for me. Even though I really enjoyed it at a young age, I thought it required so much more than I knew how to give. So I've been pleasantly surprised, and certainly the evolution of the internet and Twitter writing community and literature in general, and what literary agents are looking for and publishers are seeking to publish, has evolved significantly since I was a kid, and to my benefit, I'm very pleased to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful, really, because, I mean, in front of you, you had the option of, publishing your own work, rather than going to a traditional publishing house. But you were talented enough, I suppose. Well, not that people that, publish their own work aren't talented, and in fact, multimillionaires have been made by this course. But it's wonderful that you were able to find an agent that was able to, help you along the traditional path of being published by a well-known brand, I suppose. And that leads me to my next question. When you finish your manuscript, how many times you edit it, I assume quite a few times, and then your husband reads it, and then do you give it to your agent, and then do they read it and double check it and give you their feedback before you then give it to your editor at your publishers? Is that how it goes usually?
Yes, that's exactly right. I try to get the manuscript to where I feel confident in it, and then I allow my husband to read it. And once I feel like from there I can incorporate his notes and other ideas that I had, then once I feel like it's in a really solid place, I'll send it to my agent. And once I incorporate her notes, then I'll finally submit it to my editor. But it does take anywhere from 3 to 6 months for me to write a manuscript. Yeah, it's just, I never can tell. I never can tell how long it'll take. And it's because I don't fully know where I'm going when I begin the story. So I allow myself that extra time to kind of explore.
Wow, that's wonderful. So you must be one of these writers that has like little notebooks in your bag and you start scribbling whenever you get like little bits of inspiration, or you record people's conversations on the bus and things like that so you can put them in a book one day. Is that something that you do? Like,
Yes.
do you have a book of ideas, or like how do you get such a such a bolt of energy every year to write another book? I mean, some writers can't write for another 7 years, and yet you're doing so well. Good for you, and you're raising a young family.
Yes, thank you. That's very kind. And you are absolutely right on there. I don't have a book that I write in, although I do have several journals that are beautiful that I won't touch because they're so exquisite to me. But I do have a notes app page in my phone where I do jot down notes. I'll jot down snippets of conversations that I hear, or just little ideas that have struck me. And so my second book, Lies We Bury, was actually an idea that I had back in 2010. And it's a concept that stayed with me for these many years. And so finally, after I finished Missing Sister, I thought I can finally write this book. This idea has gripped me for so many years.
Wow.
And I wrote Lies We Bury, hoping that readers would also be gripped by it, or at least intrigued enough to open the first page and go from there.
So have you always been a thriller fan? I've always loved reading
Yes.
thrillers. Mhm.
Yes, I have always been a thriller fan, but I read widely. Truly, I think it's important as a writer to read across genre and to understand what the trends are, but then first and foremost to read passionately for yourself. If you're not a reader, I don't understand how you can be a writer. And I completely understand not having time to read as a young mother. It's incredibly difficult to find time, but I'm still a voracious reader at heart. And so I first got into thrillers. It's going to be a surprise when I was a kid.
That's so cute.
When I was a kid, I think I was 11 reading Stephen King's Richard Bachman's
Wow.
The Regulators,
You
and
weren't
I shouldn't
freaking
have
out,
read it.
screaming around the house. That's what I was like with Stephen King. Actually
Yeah,
screaming and running around the house like I was trying to escape the book. But you were
yes.
little and you were still managing to not be scared, or you were just deliciously scared.
Um, Deliciously scared. I also had the benefit of reading it during, sorry, I keep giggling, during free time in my sixth grade classroom when I was 11 years old. So I was reading in the bright light, surrounded by other people.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty safe. Yeah.
Yes, it was a very safe environment for me.
Yeah. All right. So we understand that you had any, hold on, before I go to the next question about your next step, have you had any film offers, maybe for some of your books, or some kind of indication that maybe one day some of them, or maybe all of them, one of them might be filmed?
Yes, yes, there have been,
Wow.
but nothing has been decided, set in stone. Something that I've learned as a writer is that the adjacent film industry takes
Ever.
forever,
Yeah.
particularly longer than I would prefer as the writer. But there has been film interest, so
Yeah.
I'm
That's really,
hopeful.
you never know. Yeah. It's
Yes,
quite common from what I've understood the
yes,
industry to be like. So,
yes.
okay. So, um, one last, maybe second last question then. So, what are you working on now? We understand that you've got a new book coming out next March, um, next year, called The Family Bones. So, are you able to talk about that, or not really? Or can you talk to us
Uh,
about what you're working on now? Maybe.
Yes, I am. Well, I'm very excited about The Family Bones. I finished structural edits on it, and it is coming out March 2023, available for pre-order now. It's essentially a locked room mystery set in the mountains of Eastern Oregon, and it's the premise is there's a family retreat among psychopaths that goes horribly
Wow.
wrong, as it is wont to do. And so it was a lot of fun writing this, and I discovered so much along the way. It's very much an ode to true crime families, true crime podcasters, and I think it just turned out very, very well. I'm very
That
pleased with it.
sounds incredible. I
It was
can
fun.
almost see it on Netflix. I mean, it sounds like, oh my God, it's intriguing.
I would love that.
Psychopaths in a cabin. Great.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That sounds really good.
Yes.
Um, so one thing I wanted to ask you before we said goodbye today is if you could have three people over for dinner, the classic question, whether they're with us or not, who would you like to invite and why? Just for a bit of fun.
Ooh, okay. Well, I would say Jane Austen, as she is, I mean, her work is just incredible. And her books are books that I can continue to read over and over and over again, which is not always the case for me. Gillian Flynn, of course, a thriller queen herself. I would love to just pick her brain. And then maybe, oh, shoot, I'm going to blank on his name, but oh, I think it's Oscar Edwards Heinrich. He was the first American forensic criminologist.
Wow.
And I just finished a biography on him by Kate Winkler Dawson, who also has a true crime podcast called Tenfold More Wicked. And he just led an incredible life. And I think it's fascinating, his mindset and how he was able to pioneer so many different methods of forensic science, so many decades before we really took them seriously. So I think it would be Jane Austen, Gillian Flynn, and then
Wow.
Oscar Edward Heinrich.
What a combination. How wonderful. Imagine being there. It'd be like terrific. Look, thank you
It
so much
would.
for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you and reading your work and talking to you about your writing progress and process. And yeah, we wish you the best of luck and continued on success.
Thank you. That's very kind. It was such a pleasure to speak with you. And I'm so grateful to readers everywhere and to be able to chat with you about my work.
Definitely. Well, we're very happy to be reading your work as well. So lovely to meet you and good luck once again.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye.